Greetings, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to this latest edition of Tales from Outer Space. Hope you enjoy. Genetic Modification, written by Hope Data Adam. The workplace is crude, unsanitized, and extremely disorganized. As I walk down the hallways, following the group of galactic scientists and researchers, I see exposed wires, loose panel, and peeking into the rooms with open doors. Such sights were horrifying to me. Each breath I took, I nearly choked on whatever chemical is in the air, getting to the point that it was hard to breathe, while the undivinely annoying sounds of industrial worry, clanking and hammering, filled my hearing apparatus. Don't the humans know one thing or two about cleanliness, aesthetics, and completion? This whole facility is a health hazard, a disaster waiting to happen, and every work done here will lead to someone's death. But the exposed piping and wires, the creaking and incomplete floor panels, it's horrendously obvious they construct this facility in haste, or perhaps do not have enough funds to afford such luxuries. If humans do not have the funds to completely check the list of workplace safety and satisfy the eyes of a design officer, then they cannot be considered as a race with unlimited financial and economical growth. Truly abominable of how they treat not only their equipment and shelter, but also their precious scientists who work in such conditions. Their minds are brilliant. I have seen some of their work. From space travel to space management to waste disposal, they bring so many new ideas onto the field of science of the galaxy. It's just a shame they do not work in good conditions, and I fear that it affects their most brilliant minds and thinking. I feel extreme pity, as of now, and want to just abduct their scientists and have them work in our facilities. We would give them the necessary tools, the necessary materials, and most of all the necessary healthy work environment that they need. So many distractions, so many disruptions, I cannot even hear myself think right this moment. I refocus my attention on my colleagues up ahead of me, and I look closely at their heads and faces, even their bodies. I try looking for a hint of the same dissatisfaction within them, trying to see if they share my views and try to justify my observation reports. I curl my lips up in satisfaction to see that all of them, through twitches of their limbs, squinted eyes, and occasional retching from their tracheas, they too think the same. The human guides are in front of the group, guided down the winding hallways to some distant destination. This facility truly feels like a maze, sharp turning corners, frequent deviations in path. It's all chaotic. He's now surprised the humans find a way to get through this mess, but he doesn't doubt that they all hold some navigation device in their person. Now, looking past the crowd of fellow researchers, I look at the Xenos, the humans, bipedal, 2 arms, and most of all, rather short. This is due to the gravity of their home planet, the planet they evolved in. The heavy gravity naturally pulled down on the humans, stunting their ability to grow past 7 feet tall. But I'm now thinking back to the background report on the humans. They pierced through their planet's atmosphere over 157 Sol Sun cycles ago, landed on their natural moon 145 Sol Sun cycles ago, and developed a unique faster-than-light travel method 50 Sol cycles ago. In their calendar, it is now currently the year 2114, and calculating these aeronautical and space travel feats, their time frame is absolutely phenomenal. However, the methods they used to achieve these achievements were crude and brutal. They were not using refined techniques, and instead put their pioneers in metal tubes and blasted them into the air with chemical reactions of oxygen and hydrogen, practically strapped onto a massive explosive tank aimed to get as high as possible and push through the atmosphere. But they did it. I have to admit, their recklessness got them to what they are today. Hastiness and trying to win over competition are within their veins, and most often than not, they prevail. But still, I could not excuse the absolutely abominable environment their brightest minds are working in. Such barbarism and inelegance displayed by a spacefaring species might as well classify them as non-sapient. Telezex, are you still with us? I hear the synthesized, imperfectly replication of the human's tone and voice boom in my hearing apparatus. The translation device needs more work, but as I open my 3 eyes, I see that I have fallen behind the group and the human was checking in on me. I was quite embarrassed. My display of arrogance to the task at hand was shameful as a member of the knowledge community. I first catch up with the group who are waiting for me, and when I still hadn't given an answer, they stay still and quiet. I open my mouth to speak, but the air I breathed in caused me to heave. My exhale brings some relief, but the chemical-filled air is still tightly coiled around my lungs. Yes, I'm with you, Dr. James, and please just address me by my full title. The human smiles nonchalantly and nods at my request. Very well, High Scientist Council Member Legionaris Darzek Molexex. My apologies for wrongly addressing you. A force of habit, you see. The human then pushes up his reading glasses and turns to continue to guide the mob of researchers and scientists. The other human scientist, his name was Dmitri? I could not remember, must have witnessed my act of choking on the air, and reassured me of the time of the arrival of their destination. Do not worry, we will be there soon enough. You just have to endure it for a little bit longer. His voice was deep, and somehow it could not shake the feeling that his tone and the way he said those words were meant to mock me. But I calmed and steeled myself. I am a High Scientist Council Member Legionaris. I will not be provoked by such pitiful attempts at insulting me. I only squinted my eyes and continued to follow along with the group. Besides, if they do mock me too far, their feeble bodies will be crushed by my jercamb. Finally, they came upon a hydraulic-reinforced door, guarded by 2 human soldiers wearing their standard uniform and equipment. In what they lacked in their biological bodies, they made up by their mechanical alterations. If a human loses a limb, they would replace it with a pneumatic one. If they cracked a section of their endoskeleton, they would replace it with a metal pole. If they broke their joints, they could replace it with a ball joint. It is quite a marvel of engineering, and human endurance, to not only go through the process of replacing one's body parts with an artificial one, but also the long journey of adapting to the changes that have been done. Many of my race have tried artificial transplants before in history. However, once they've deemed the transplant stable and the patient was discharged, they would die of shock and immune rejection the next day. All right, the human scientist James said to the soldier to the right, confirming something with them. He then turned around, along with Dmitri, and faced the crowd of waiting, bored, and exhausted scientists. First, I would like to thank you all for coming here, and most of all, enduring the journey through our bare-bones facility. Even the human himself admits that the facility is extremely incomplete. Human James holds up his hand in one of his fingers, raising his chin and acting confidently. But we promise, the next time you visit here, it will be finished. Human James lowered his arm and finger, clasping them behind his back. But today's focus is not on the facility, but what houses it. Ladies, gentlemen, Defer and Panoia, today you will witness one of humanity's greatest achievements in science. We appreciate your patience, and we apologize for keeping you this secretive until now. We think the surprise and shock will be worth all of your effort coming here. So that's the reason why I was not briefed as to the reason for this invitation. It is a surprise. The only thing I was surprised by the human invention was the FTL Lagrange drive, so I'll be the judge of this one. The huge blasters begin to whir and creak, and the red bulb above it begins to flash red, signifying their entrance. Human James turned his body, but not his head, still focused on the group. Better strap yourselves in. This'll be a woozy. Ignoring the human's strange description, the crowd of scientists, including myself, walked past the secure blast doors. And once I've stepped through, the environment completely changed. The room was sleek and complete, with no open wires, no anything. It feels like a lounge in a car-cellaring station, with the temperature and air cool, and the scenery beautiful. Adorned with vases of various plants, and spacious room is colored golden with the light blue elements in the corners. The blast doors beep, and it begins closing with the same familiar whirring. My peers are also amazed by their change of scenery, but ultimately takes a seat at the arranged armchairs in the room. The blast doors closes, and that's when I could feel the change in the air quality. The air in the room is absolutely phenomenal. Within an instant, my lungs were purged of the impurities of the incomplete facility outside, and I let out a brief sigh of relief, just like my peers. After enjoying a newfound peace for a few seconds, I sit down in one of the many armchairs. That's when I noticed the reinforced glass was in fact not a mirror, as its mirroring effects is lifted, and it gives a view of the scene beyond. A room of human scientists, with panels and dials that looked ancient, made from crude steel and polymers, but it is highly important in each of their individual roles. I witnessed human scientists James and Dimitri leave their observation room from a cleverly blended-in door on the side and join their colleagues within the operating room. The little speakers within the room then make an audible blow of air, and it is from scientist Dimitri that has taken over the intercom system. Ahem. He clears his throat, an indication that he is about to speak. Thank you once again for the time and attention, Xenos. Dimitri crudely addresses the group of highly praised scientists. Complaints were thrown and whines echoed, with the silence themselves. A moment later, as of today, you will be the first species of the galactic community to witness this historic event. I am obliged to tell you that this whole event is recorded for archival reasons. Please do not be alarmed. Several of the more warlike and paranoid species looked up at the corners of the observation room, trying to see the hidden recording cameras, but they came up empty-handed. None of your reactions or evidence of witnessing this event will be released to the public without your consent, and that means from all of you. That relieves me somewhat. A verbal agreement is far from a written and signed contract, but it's a solid evidence that I can use in court if I have to sue the humans. I tightened one of my ornamental shoulder balls, it being a listening device. But if you do try to pull any legal shit on us, we have the evidence that we legally can use for our case. A moment later, human scientist Dimitri was removed off the intercom system within the operating room, and the sound of human scientist James comes on. My deepest apologies for my colleague's rude words. But he is right. Do not be alarmed. The recordings are only for archival reasons and not blackmail. The much more reasonable and sober-sounding human ensured the group. The lights in the observation room were slightly dimmed, the psychological technique to focus the group's attention on the operating room. It is now time to begin the procedure. This is not an experiment, nor is it a newly made technology. This has been in the making for the past decade, and we are proud to finally reveal it to the rest of the galaxy. The group and I witness a coffin-like structure be raised at an angle in the middle of the operating room. Human scientist Dimitri and his colleagues working away on dials, valves, levers, and buttons, while James is being charismatic. All of you esteemed members of the scientific community will be witnessing the final product of those 10 years of effort. Sweat and blood have been poured into this project for the betterment of not only human race, but the galaxy. Okay, now this is starting to wind on and on. I am now impatient to hear what it is that they are doing and trying to show us. This whole formalities thing that I've never been fond of, however, being a scientist, means that I am not free from the shackles of bureaucracy and diplomacy. But I wait patiently, as in the operating room a small, scrawny, sick-looking human enters the room with the help of 2 scientists. Today, we'll be witnessing the first artificial biological improvement on a human body. Impossible! Everyone within the observation room looked in interest, but most of all, surprise. This is a surprise for sure, and now I am intrigued to see how this will play out. One of my colleagues to my left have their hands trembling as they looked on at them with shock. Impossible! No way! I've tried it in all 23 sun cycles in my career to artificially improve our biological makeup, to improve the lives of the born sick, to save my kin. His voice trembled with both sadness and envy. 23 sun cycles. That's equivalent to 56 soul sun cycles. Where have you been, humans? I lowered my gaze from my colleague to return to the procedure. I could not listen to his desperate ramblings, but what he did say is true. He tried for 56 soul sun cycles to do what the humans achieved in 10. Where have the humans been all this time if they were able to do such scientific marvels like this? I let out a solemn sigh and pushed away the emotions that had settled within my heart. I want to see this procedure, if it succeeds, when the humans have done what countless scientists and galactic community tried to do for centuries. If it fails, then it is yet another failure to be added to the annals of history. Here we have Anthony Young. He is 13 soul sun cycles old, and he has been suffering from Down syndrome since birth. I take a closer look at the child's face, and it has a distinct look on it, one that appears different from regular humans. Down syndrome causes a distinct facial appearance, intellectual disability, and development delays. At age 11 on cycles, he was struck by an automobile, fracturing his spine and losing his ability to walk. I once again looked around the operating room to see any piece of physical evidence to support this claim, and to the right corner, there is a wheelchair with a bouquet of flowers laid on it. How tragic, so young, to not only be born with a disorder that delays his development, but also struck by a disaster that leaves him paralyzed. The doctor within me feels heavy sympathy for the child, and I looked away for a moment, closing my eyes to catch myself from slipping away into an emotional trance. Once I opened my eyes again, Anthony is being helped into the now open coffin-like structure, now with some structure, and laid like a bed. Anthony comfortably lays on the cushion. We have full consent from his parents to conduct this assured procedure, and he himself has expressed the wish to be able to walk again. While the ability to walk can be regained by Anthony through exercise and training, it would take years, if not decades. This procedure will shorten that process into a few minutes. Anthony is then strapped into the machine. Not too tight, it seems, and he appears to be comfortable. 2 human scientists take several vials of purple, alkaline-looking liquids from vial holder and slip it into the slots in the machine. And then they inject Anthony with something, and then another injection with both needles. Around a minute later, Anthony falls asleep. It must be anesthesia and propofol that the scientists have given Anthony. They are common human drugs to inhibit their pain receptors and slow brain activity to a point of sleep. This way, the surgeons can operate on the patient without inflicting any harm, and without the patient intruding on their operation. Anthony is now placed within the officially named HFY machine. Once he is encased, the vials on the saw inserted into the machine will have their fluids be injected into Anthony's bloodstream. Do not worry, this procedure is safe for his age. During human scientist James's word, the coffin encased itself and is lifted up at an angle again. We will now begin the procedure. I could not sit still in my seat. I want to take a closer look, see what is happening to Anthony, and see the human scientists at work closely in their respective stations. But now, I'm stuck in the seat, within an observation room. All of a sudden, an almost pulsing light begins to emanate from the coffin. The small piece of reinforced glass on the head of the coffin gives a much clearer view of this pulse. And, like a human heart doing a tasking job, it pulses faster and harder. The light becomes brighter and brighter, and the pulsing becomes faster. The tension is extremely high. What is happening? What are these pulses? Why are they happening? What purpose do they serve in this procedure? So many questions that I cannot get answers to right away. But everyone in the group watches with intrigued, piqued eyes with the procedure. I'm at the edge of my seat, my hands holding on the armrest of the armchair, the anticipation within me growing, the excitement climbing. And then, like a shutting off of a fusion engine, the pulsing of the light fade away, and there is only silence. Dimitri, everyone can hear the human scientist James ask his colleague, perhaps concerned, perhaps ordering him. He can't be sure. Because a moment later, the coffin that had made so much fuss opens with a hiss. It unfolds and reveals someone unrecognizable. Anthony's height has increased, his muscle mass larger, and most of all, his appearance appears to be like a healthy human. Each of my colleagues' breaths was taken away, including mine. My earlier peer that had vented their emotions to me broke into tears. Such technology. This is massive, absolutely massive. Anthony woke up in his new state, and he too is amazed by his change. The scientists help the new Anthony get out of the HFY machine and stands up. First, the scientists were hesitant to let him go, since they knew Anthony had fractured his spine and can't walk. But Anthony clearly tells them to let him go, and he stands so tall. He breathes a sigh of amazement, of shock, of surprise. He looks towards the scientists that are all around him and begins thanking them all. And the human scientist's crew breaks into cheers and clapping. I and my peers can't help but do the same. The demonstration ended an hour afterward. I got to watch Anthony meet his mother and father, and they were enthralled by his new condition. I still could not fathom how this could be, but I have to accept it. I see human scientist James, and I immediately approach him with haste. Taking a deep breath to replace my exasperated exhales earlier, I try to stand tall, stoic, and respectful on human scientist James. But I just can't. He and his team's work here is incredible, and I want to know everything about this project. Aye, Dr. James James replies with a warm smile, nodding. Hi, Scientist Council member Legionaris Darzek Maldestex. What is it? I chuckled. Even after his word-changing achievement, he still respects my wish of addressing me by my full title. Please, call me Dr. Lesgans. And it gained a similar chuckle from James, with him nodding in confirmation. Dr. James, what you've done here is incredible. Please, I need to know whether this technology can be downsized to affect food, medicine. James appears smug, surprised, and most of all holding in a laugh. I look on in confusion at his expression, screaming at him to mentally say what he's hiding. Dr. Lesix, I know that you are not aware of this, but the technology my team and I demonstrated today was an upscaled version of something humans already had. What? Yeah, we've done genetic modifications for 2 centuries now. Before, we could only do it on small things such as fruits, mice, cattle, medicine, and more. We cannot do it directly to both human and child. What the feck? End of story. I'd quickly like to thank the T5 channel members and patrons. Caspar Arnholtz, Cam Maxwell, Lord Azrakal, Dragzoon WRE, Holly Sister, Ambrose Cattell, and Quantum Wednesday. Thank you very much.